Welcome, everybody. I am here with Luis Alvarez, Alvarez Technology Group down in Salinas, California. Luis has been on the show several times, and we had to have him back because how long have you been in business now, Luis?
Next year will be 20 years. Actually, in 3 months, it'll be 20 years that we've started Alvarez Technology Group.
Wow. That's huge. So congratulations. Maybe you can give a little backgrounder. But, even at 20 years, you've gone through something recently that is enabling you to take it up a notch, go even better, go even farther. And it's very consistent with what we do. So I'd love to hear about it. But if you can start with a backgrounder and then dive in, I think this is going to be a great conversation for our audience.
Sure. Happy to. So Alvarez Technology Group, like I said, started almost 20 years ago. And before that, I had been a partner in another systems integrator that we, in Monterey, that we grew to about 80 employees and sold it in 1999, I like to say, at the height of the dot-com boom. We got out at the right time, needless to say. So my partners and I sold the company. 2 of the partners retired, and I stuck around managing the new entity, which was now part of a larger public company. 2 lessons that I learned there is, 1, never work for a public company. It's a horrific experience, especially in management. And 2, make sure that you understand the culture of who you're buying into, especially if you ever get acquired by another company and part of the terms are sticking around. So we didn't mesh.
So I'm kind of curious, that culture piece, if you could rewind the tape.
Sure.
Of course, we don't have tapes anymore. However you say it, hit reverse. You could go back. What would have clued you in? What would you have looked for that would have let you know, this may be a good sale, but it's not a good fit moving forward?
What I saw after the fact that I should have been looking for ahead of time was what their plans were for the team that they were absorbing. That is to say, I would have wanted to spend more time with other acquisitions that they had done and talk to those leaders of those companies that stuck around to say, hey, what worked, what didn't work? We just bought into all the marketing hype of, this is going to be great. You're going to love this. The internet is a new thing and everybody loves it. And you're just going to make tons and tons of money. And then 2 years into it, the dot-com explosion, I think, was part of it because they started scrambling and making decisions that I didn't agree with. And if I've been a Rotarian for almost as long as I've been running ATG, and there's this thing called the 4-way test. And one of the elements is, is it right for all concerned? And this company started making a lot of decisions that was not right for anybody but the people at the top. And that's when I said, I think it's time for me to move on. And I left them, started Alvarez Technology Group a few months later. And, the rest is history. We've been based in Salinas, California, so from day one. It's, for those of you that aren't familiar with California, it's the Central Coast. It's where John Steinbeck wrote most of his novels about the farmers and the working class of the Monterey area, including East of Eden and some of those books. So it's very accurate portrayal of really hardworking people that love agriculture and love the land. And that was one of the reasons when I left this other company and I had the option to go anywhere, I decided, no, I want to stay here and continue to do what I've been doing and continue to help these small businesses grow. And I haven't regretted it since. It's been a great 20-year ride. If you look at technology at the turn of the century, God, I can't believe we say that phrase, compared to now, it's so much has changed, yet so much is still the same. But one of the things that has changed is the way that we do business. I mean, back then, I would say that we were largely of the baby boomer, Gen Xer generation. It was a different way of looking at the world, a different way of looking at what it means to get up and go to work. Now you have this massive influence. Technically 5 generations of people who are working. We have some guys that are still, clients of ours who are in their 90s that still go to the office every day. These farmers that just aren't going to, they're going to die someday, and it's going to be on a tractor.
They'd die if they stopped working.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, they would.
So you got those guys, and you got the baby boomers, you got the Gen Xers, and so what that made me think about was, as a business, you have to reinvent yourself constantly to keep up with not only what's going on in your industry, but also keep up with what's going on in the world. And a couple of years ago, we were kind of facing that. We had done a really good job with the help of people like you and others to really reinvent ourselves multiple times as the years went by. But now I had a really good management team. I had some key people that I had brought in. We were doing really good things, but we were a little undisciplined in my mind. I was looking for something to tie it all together. And I was at a conference and somebody suggested reading this book called Traction, which I'd never heard of. And the book is about what they call the Entrepreneurial Operating System, or EOS. And EOS is a concept that takes all of the best things from other books, things like, Built to Last, Good to Great, the Rockefeller Habits, all of these little pieces, and puts it together in a very simple to understand, implementable methodology. And that's what really appealed to me. And they, when you read the book, and there's a couple of other, Gino Wickman is the author, and he did a couple of other books, including one that's a parable, along the lines of Lencioni, trying to show a company implementing EOS. And it's really a good book. It's fun to read. But as you go through it, you realize you can do the implementation in baby steps. And that's what appealed to me. So we started the fourth quarter of 2018. And just this quarter, almost a year later, started rolling it out to the entire company. We just started with our management team because we told ourselves we needed to understand it. We had to figure out what worked, what didn't work, what was some of the things that we liked about Traction, but maybe didn't work with what we wanted to do. And there were other things that we were already doing that we wanted to continue doing, even though they weren't necessarily part of Traction. So at the beginning of this quarter, we felt that comfortable enough and prepared to roll it out. And so that's what we're doing now.
So I'm curious, and I also want to compliment you that you are one of the few where your closest friend, best partner, Ronnie, your wife, has worked with you side by side in this business. You're very different. You're the extrovert. She's the introvert.
Yep.
And you're more probably open to change, whereas she's more, okay, well, show me how that works. And I'm really intrigued as you talk about rolling this out. So many entrepreneurs will read a book like that or come back from a conference and hear somebody speak and they're like, okay, we're changing everything. Yeah. And it's just, it goes and dies. So I'm very impressed that you took this approach. Was that kind of your idea, or was it the team coming together?
Well, what I did because of that particular circumstance, which I had abused of my team numerous times in the past, I said, this time I want to approach it differently. So I got copies of the book for everybody, and I said, hey, let's read this as a group and talk about it on our weekly management meetings, and see if this is something we want to do collectively. And not make it, okay, an edict from on high. Lewis says we're going to do this, so we'll just begrudgingly do it until he goes away, and then we'll ignore it. So it was a collective effort. We read the book, spent about a month talking about it's not a very big book. It doesn't take long to read. So you can cover most of it in a few weeks. And then we talked about things like they have these meetings called the level 10 meetings, which can change just if you implement that one thing, the EOS, it changes your whole system of meetings and makes them much more efficient, much more productive, rather than spending a lot of time in very disorganized, me first kind of meetings. It gives you this discipline that says, no, we're going to cover these 10 critical things that we need to talk about first. And we're going to cover them pretty quickly. We're going to get through those in about 10 minutes, because it's really not about explaining ourselves. It's about saying whether we're on track or off track. If you're off track and you need help, great, bring it up and we'll work an issue at the end of the meeting. But if you're off track just because you are on vacation or whatever, then don't tell us. We don't care. So we go, it's amazing how quickly we get to the meat of our meetings now, where we are tackling issues and and really coming out of those meetings um, with actionable items that we can then take to the rest of the company and say, hey, we've solved this problem, or we've moved the problem along, and now we can just ignore it and not revisit it 10 more times in 10 other meetings.
Yeah, yeah. And what I like that Wickman did was, he had a similar realization that I did, that you got to be systematic in
Mhm.
what you do. So the whole concept of his entrepreneurs operating system, great. When you talk about the L10 and there's 10 things you go through, can you give the audience who isn't familiar with the system what some of those 10 are?
Sure. So my favorite thing is that you start with a segue, right? So, and you wonder, well, what's a segue? Well, it's at 5 minutes, and you stick to 5 minutes, man. I tell you, I watch the clock like a hawk. And at 4:50, I'm saying, okay, 10 seconds, and then we're done.
That's from your radio background, on the air, off the air, you're ready to go.
But you spend 5 minutes just giving everybody a chance to chat up and share something that was positive from the week before. It's not really about problem solving or discussing issues. It's more just like checking in. Then you go to what the EOS system calls your rocks, and these are monthly or quarterly goals that you set at the beginning of each quarter that align with your annual goals. So once a year, you sit down, you go through and create your rocks for the year. These are the things that you want to get accomplished before the end of the year. And then you break those up into smaller bites, quarterly bites. And then every quarter you have certain rocks. And so you check in on those rocks, and it's simply that, checking in, yes or no, I'm on track or I'm not on track. If you need help, you can raise your hand and say, hey, I need to work an issue because I'm off track, because I've run into a problem and I need the team to help me solve it. But then you add that to the list of issues you're going to work. Then you go through your to-do list. At the end of every meeting, you have a to-do list of things that each member of your team has said, I will get this accomplished by the next meeting. And you just confirm that you did them all. Yep, got that done, got that done, got that done. So by the time you get done with those things, you've literally been in the meeting for 15 minutes, but yet now, normally that 15-minute chunk of time would have completely taken up the entire meeting, as everybody wanted to talk about why they were off track, or why they didn't get to it to do, or why, it's not about that. It's about just, did you get it done or did you not get it done? So then you get to the issues list, and the issues list is prioritized. You pick, typically at the beginning of a quarter, you have a much longer issues list than the end of the quarter, but so you may have 15 or 16 items on there. But these meetings are 90 minutes long, so you only work as much as you can work in that 90 minutes. So it forces you to prioritize them. You have to say, what are the top 3 things that we need to, on this list, that we need to talk about? Talk through those top 3. If you have time, okay, what are the next top 3? And so on and so on. So the discipline of getting things done is really powerful. And for me, because as you know, I get attracted to shiny objects all the time. What the quarterly cadence does is it forces me to say, okay, that's not part of this quarter's activities, not part of this quarter's rocks. So if I really want to do this, I'm going to put this in a parking lot and revisit it at the end of the quarter when we're setting the rocks for next quarter. And chances are, as these things go, by the end of the quarter, when this parking lot list of things that I thought was really important comes up again, I'm like, you know what? None of those things really matter anymore. I've gotten over that stuff. So let's move on. So for me, it enforces a certain amount of discipline that I didn't have personally.
But I think, Louis, I mean, you've been around a few years, 2 or 3, 20 at least in this company. So, but I think you had part of that. I mean, your natural inclination, your behavior may have been the shiny object. But even when we were working together, I think that was like 7 years ago or whenever it was, you still had some discipline on your time. What it sounds like, if I'm hearing you correctly, is this system just reinforced the direction that you wanted to go and some habits that you were already building. Sounds like it was very timely. Did it have any major breakthroughs for any members of your team?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think that the most important element that all the team leaders learned was those L10 meetings, right? Because they looked at that and saw how effective it was in our meetings, and they immediately wanted to turn around and implement it with their team. And I had to kind of hold them back and say, no, let's do this for at least 6 months. to
Yeah.
make sure that we understand it well enough that we can explain it to somebody else, as opposed to, starting it with them. And then we discover that, oh no, we've been doing it the wrong way. Here's the right way to do it. So holding them back was actually the toughest thing I had to do. But then when they went into the L10 meetings for each of their departments, we already were doing the morning huddles, but the huddles now became much more focused and not just a kind of loosely defined, hey, what's going on in your world. By putting caps on the amount of time that you were going to spend on these activities and enforcing those caps, you recognize that everybody just was like, okay, let's just get to the meat. Let's not dilly dally, because I only got 5 minutes and I got to get my say in my 5 minute, in my portion of the huddle. So we can talk about the donuts later. Let's move on.
Well, that's like Rob Betzel, who wrote the Company Culture Challenge with me. They used to do their huddles at 7:43 in the morning, and they were done at 8 a.m. every morning without fail. It was like start and stop, had to be on time. Anything else, separate meeting.
Yeah, and that's actually one of the things that implementers for EOS will talk about, that those huddles, you shouldn't necessarily start them at the top of the hour or the bottom of the hour. You should pick an oddball time to make people show up, right? If you say, okay, our 5 minute huddle starts at 7:43, you're like, okay, that's not 7:45. So I better be ready on that call at 7:42. And same thing with our longer meetings. We had a tendency to kind of float in from different meetings, or go back-to-back meetings, and somebody would show up and we'd hold the meeting up while we're waiting for them to finish off with a call or whatever. Now the meeting gets started on time, whether you're there or not. And if you show up after the meeting starts, you're going to get glared at, and nobody likes to be glared at. So now most of us show up 5 minutes early, and we want to be ready, and we want to respect the other people in the room with us, and respect their time, and make it feel to them that this is an important enough meeting that I'm going to be here on time, so that I don't play the role of the visionary that is scatterbrained and doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah, well, that would never happen. But I'm kind of curious. So you are in a very interesting market too, because a lot of your clients are growers. And as this technology has gone out in the fields, and you've talked to that on earlier shows, you can mention it again here. But I'm curious. So you take that meeting concept, now you're more focused, you're working together better. Where have you seen that it was some specific improvements, some specific impact that's happened out with your people, with your clients, or within the teams?
Well, for me, the biggest impact has been that now we set aside time to work on issues, so that we don't work on them every day, all day long, right? So this habit that we had, where somebody would knock on my door and say, hey, do you got a minute? Sure. What do you want to talk about? Now, if it's an issue that can wait till, if it's an emergency, obviously we got to deal with it. But if it's just a process or procedure issue and they want to talk about it, I just say, can it wait till the leadership team meeting? And I've said it enough, and everybody has said that enough to me, that now we just, Ronnie is the keeper. She's the integrator. If you know the roles in EOS, and in every organization, there's a visionary and an integrator. The visionary is the guy like me, or the gal who has the big picture and is not really concerned a lot about details. That they're more concerned about getting things done, thinking about big things. And the integrator is really the person that helps keep the organization together. And also in the EOS system, if you follow it, they have the final say in how things, in what the final decision is going to be. So if there's, not consensus, or you can't agree on something, it's the integrator's decision as to what gets done. And so Ronnie plays that role. She's not really comfortable in it, because she doesn't like to enforce her will on anybody other than me. So, she likes to work with consensus. So I still wear a little bit of the integrator hat. But we give her all of our issues that we want to work in the leadership team meeting, so that we're not doing those as we go throughout the week and not getting them done, because we usually don't have we don't work them to conclusion if you're just doing it in passing as I'm getting into, heading to the kitchen to get a glass of water, So that's important. It's freed me up from having to be in the office all the time, because we have the huddles, we have, very succinct meetings. And so I can be out in front of our clients a lot more, which is something I love doing. I don't love sitting at my desk and waiting for somebody to show up with a problem. I like, being out there and talking to clients and finding out what's important to them and how we can help them accomplish whatever their goals are. And I can spend a lot more time doing what I call my second job, which is as CTO, finding out, what's the next big thing that's happening out there, that we need to be involved in, that we need to start getting our people to get skills to be able to help our clients with whatever that happens to be in the future. And I think that same my feelings that I just told you is probably the same sort of comments that you'll get from the rest of our team. They just feel like we're more focused than we have been in the past, and it's easier to focus.
Yeah, I'm curious. Do you participate in the morning huddles?
I do.
Okay. So because a lot of guys like Rob, after he really got it going with the huddles, he stepped away and he no longer participated because his service manager was really kind of driving the huddle.
Yeah, and I don't drive the huddle. I just and I don't participate in all of them. If I'm out of town on business or on vacation, I don't make it. I don't feel like I need to be at each huddle. But when I'm around, if I happen to be in the office or if I can dial in, I will, because I just want to listen in. I want to know what's going on, and I don't drive it. People ask me. I'm usually the last person to speak, and it's. My comments are usually, yep, I'll see you guys in the office in 30 minutes. And that's about it.
Well, and it's interesting what you say about the implementer versus the visionary. So you have this relationship with Ronnie, your wife. That's great. But you still carry some of the implementer or piece. In a similar way, I think 4 years ago, Jeff came to me and wanted me to do a similar thing where he's like, hey, I want to control budget. I want to manage the software development. I think I can do that better than you, and I want final say. And of course, Jeff is my son, now 33. And so at the time he was 29. And it shocked a few people that know us both that I slept on it overnight to think about it. And I said, sure, you got it, because I think you can do that better than me. So he will hold the line. And he's the one that said, okay, you want to talk to me about this? That can wait till our weekly meeting on Monday. So just put that on the list. And he's got me into that habit now. And it's been very helpful where I still wear part of that hat on the implementers. I'm more the driver. I have more the sense of urgency, similar to what you do, probably in your organization.
Yeah.
There's a balance.
For me, it frees me up to do what I do best, which is, get in front of our clients, talk to our team, talk to prospects, think up of what we need to be doing in terms of new technologies or new services, participate in conferences. My team is always happy to see me leave to go to some conference. They're like, yay, he's gone. We can go get on with our lives. But they're also interested in what have we learned. When we come back, it's always like, what's the big takeaway? What are the new things? What's big out there that we should be talking about?
Well, that's great. And I'm kind of curious. So when you're in these LT10 meetings, all right, you bring up that there's certain things that people say, go to the parking lot, which kind of sounded like you were mainly the guy saying, go to the parking lot. I'm curious of your other people that are in those meetings, or do they feel, I'm sure people feel safe in your company to speak up, but do they speak up and they're actually Ronnie's not delegating to them to tell you to put it in the parking lot or somebody else, but they're actually speaking up on their own. They have the initiative.
Yeah, I mean, and we call each other on things. That's the other part of EOS that I really like, is that you have to build, and you have to have a lot of trust, and you have to be willing to be vulnerable, and you have to be willing to be hurt, quite frankly. And not a lot of organizations are, not a lot of companies have the ability to walk in a room and say, hey, somebody may call me on my BS today, and I just better be willing to take it. And we've had some really fierce conversations at times about things. So I have people that will say, I'll come up with an idea and they'll say, we're not going to do this quarter, right? This is not something that you just want to talk about this and we're going to do something about this later this year. And I'm like, yeah. No, we'll do something later this year. And conversely, I've had to tell other people who want, the marketing guy will contact one of our sales guys who tells the sales manager, hey, this is a great new thing that we should be looking at. And the sales manager brings it up as an issue. And I'm like, we're full this quarter. Let's talk about it next quarter. It's still important. It's not going to go away. It's not going to change the world in the next 2 months. So let's just wait until the end of this quarter and decide whether we want to move forward with something new next quarter.
I think you bring up a cultural thing that's super important about this thing about feeling safe. But then you brought up that, at times you're kind of going toe to toe with people, at least verbally, to debate something, you need to be comfortable about that. Pat Lencioni did a podcast a few months ago where he talked about that internally, that they really go at it.
Mm-hmm.
Lencioni, they really go at it. And they've literally been in certain locations, like a restaurant meeting or whatever, and people have said, are you guys okay? And he's like, oh no, we're just talking through this. This is no problem at all. But then he said he was interviewing this guy. I don't know how long ago it was, but he just got the sense the guy was like this perfect match, but he got this sense that I don't think this guy's going to like the way I do things, like coming up with his shiny objects, because he's a big shiny object guy. And so he asked him one time, the guy said, no, I never get angry. And then went to the interview a little while longer. And then he asked him a different way. The guy still said, oh, no, I'm real patient, whatever. And then so finally he figured it out the third time. And he said, if I were to ask your wife whether you get angry, what would she say? Oh, she'd say, I got a big problem with anger. Like, bingo!
Yeah.
And so that's an important thing in the hiring piece as well as your team with that cultural match. That if you're going to have that safe feeling, everybody's got to be comfortable with that type of dialogue, whatever level you're going to get to. That's an interesting piece of the puzzle here, I think.
It's a very interesting piece. And you and I, you've helped us in the past with hiring people and evaluating employees or potential employees is, I think, one of the toughest things to get right when you are in business. Some businesses, are fairly small and they hardly ever hire, or if they hire, it's, somebody that they've known for 10 years. And that may not even work out. But when you're interviewing strangers and you're trying to figure out, is this stranger going to be a good fit with our organization? Skills are easy to figure out. Quite frankly, you and I both know that, but it's that cultural piece that is this person going to understand that we value certain things? And it's not just, here's our core values. Do you understand all these words? It's more like, give me an example. One of our core values is never give up, right? And give me an example of a time in your life where you had to persevere through adversity to get something done, no matter what. And you ask those kind of questions, and it's funny, some people will just not be able to answer it. They'll just say, I don't know. Well, once I was running late to the DMV, and they come up with these random things, but then you'll get that one person that is really passionate about it. And they'll say, yeah, I'll tell you a time. And they tell you the story and you say, that's the person I want on my team, because they understand that value. We can train the skills. We can train the other parts of it. So, and EOS does give you some tools to make sure that you have the right people and the right seats on the bus. There's an evaluation system that they use. We haven't latched onto that as much yet because we have a pretty good team of people that we've used other devices to measure whether they're a good fit or not. But if you don't have anything, it's worthwhile taking a look at.
Yeah, and the other thing you need to look at that's really interesting is when they tell that story is how did they get through that? Mm-hmm. Did they get through it in an ethical way? Did they get through it in a way where they hurt other people or what? I mean, so there's a lot of other nuances that come into play as they tell that story. And we've updated. I need to send you some of our updated interview scorecards from our Hire the Best system so you can see. And maybe you might want to walk through them with us, because I can tell you the best answers I've heard. Some of them, on the surface, it looks like this little simple question, just like yours. Tell me something you really persevered through. But when you get somebody that really gives you the detail, there can be a lot of meat there to consider, and then you can ask some additional questions to really learn more. It's big stuff.
Yeah, and when you ask those kind of questions, I always warn people, don't be surprised if somebody breaks down.
Oh, yeah.
Because sometimes, that triggers a thought in their head about a really, really bad time and something that they had to really overcome, and it can get emotional. And, we've had people in our conference room being interviewed that just break down in tears, and the rest of us break down in tears with them. We're just like, wow, that was pretty powerful.
Well, that's true. And that's a good point to make. It's like, it's not necessarily you break down in tears, you've lost the opportunity. If it's real and it doesn't indicate you can't handle the stress of the job, I mean, it's not necessarily a bad thing. I've got one of my clients, Pete Fiddler, up in New York now, Manhattan. What they've done now, with my encouragement as part of our Hire the Best system, is, remember, I always say, you got to test drive somebody before you hire them. They actually hire them as a contractor for a day now when it's a tech. And they work a full day as a contractor. And so they see how they work tickets, actual tickets, with somebody side by side, how they work with other people. And they usually throw at least one ticket at them that's impossible. So what are they going to do when they're stuck? Are they going to stay there and just grind at it for 2 hours? Are they going to complain? Are they going to, whatever? And they get to see them in different scenarios with clients. And that's really, it's not the only thing to do, but I can tell you it's been great for them.
Yeah, that's a really powerful way to evaluate somebody. Even just asking the question, hey, we want to bring you on board for a day to be a contractor to work tickets. Are you willing to do that? If they say nope,
that's right. Or, I have another one in Maryland, John Wilson at Trek Networks. He has a list of questions that are technical, and in an hour, he feels he gets a feel for somebody. You could also do 2 hours in an evening working tickets and get a good idea, even if it's not when you're getting calls, just the way they work the ticket. But I recommend, now you do a test drive for every single role. And actually, we had someone on the podcast a few weeks ago, and she is an author. It's Author Advantage, I think is what it is. But she actually sends her writers, before they even come in for the first interview, she says, we want you to do this project. It's about an hour-long project. And because we want to see how you can write, how you can do this.
Yeah.
And they give them an assignment. So before they even show up, they get an indication of how well the person can do the work that's part of the job. So the hiring piece, there's a lot of pieces to that puzzle.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and especially in California, I mean, in addition to all the normal things, right? Here in California, we have all of these other rules and regulations that say what you can and can't do. And so it takes a process that should be mutually beneficial and valuable for both parties into this like cautious, let's make sure we don't get sued for anything situation. So
poor California.
Yeah.
Well, we don't have to worry about it. One day we're all going to fall off into the sea on some big earthquake, and you'll go first because you're close.
Closer to the coast.
Any closing thoughts for people? I mean, here, I think it's a great thing, Luis, that you have been in business almost 20 years, but you're never stopping your push to improve. And so there's a lot of people out there that are different than you, where they have 1 year leadership experience and a fraction of time on work on their company culture, and they're just repeating it for 20 more years. You didn't do that. You go at it every year. How are we going to improve this thing? So what advice would you have for people out there, whether they're just starting or they've been around for decades?
Well, I would say that the number one thing as a leader that you need to have as a trait is curiosity. You have to be willing to ask questions of everything around you to see, how can I make it better? Is this as good as it gets? Because if you're complacent, the world is moving way too fast for companies to be complacent. I mean, if when you and I were growing up, somebody would have told you, yes, Sears is going to go bankrupt one day and disappear. You'll be like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, that's right.
Kodak isn't going to exist as making film. You know, Blockbuster one day won't be doing videos anymore, and you'll be getting all your video on your PC. Well, what's a PC? You know,
Yeah.
so so the world changes dramatically, and business changes dramatically. People change dramatically, and especially now with this whole new generation of a couple of new generations of people coming into the workforce that have different expectations. They lived in a world that we may not necessarily be able to understand, but it's our job as leaders to understand. It's our job as leaders to try to bring them into the fold in a way that they feel comfortable being part of it. The old days of the baby boomer generation, my way or the highway, that is so far in the past. So if you want to keep good people, if you want to attract good people, if you want to attract good clients, people that look at you and your organization and say, yeah, that's the company I want to be doing business with, then you have to always be curious and always be willing to adapt.
I think that's a great way to leave it. I could keep going, but I'm gonna leave it with what you said. But thank you so much. By the way, one last thing. If people want to get a hold of you, people want to learn more about Alvarez Technology Group, what do they do?
Well, you can either go to our website, which is alvareztg.com, or you can email me at lalvarez@alvareztg.com, and I will answer every email I get. If you go to the website, there's my contact information is there, so feel free and reach out.
That's great. And are you still doing the radio show?
I am. We recorded the weekend session because we have a holiday, so we're not going to be able to do it on Friday today. But yeah, it's been a great marketing opportunity for us. I've been doing that for almost 10 years now.
Awesome.
It's a local radio show, but it's heard by millions, let me tell you.
That's great. Well, thank you so much, Louis, for fitting us in your schedule. Always great to have you on. Please give my best to Ronnie. You guys have a great Thanksgiving.
You too. Take care.